Hello. In this video we will see a new feature of Kiali, which is monitoring runtimes metrics. So until now Kiali has been exclusively focused on service mesh monitoring. It grabs metrics from Istio and displays these metrics in various forms like at a graph and also as a raw time series and etc. And now it's going to be able to show runtimes metrics as well. So when I say runtimes metrics, I mean the metrics of your applications that can be, for instance, provided by the frameworks that you are using, but it can also be custom metrics defined by yourself in your application. And now Kiali is also able to show that. But as a first step, we will want to see how we can get these metrics into Prometheus. So this is microservices here. Basically, that's it. That's a little game, a football game with microservices. Every microservice here is developed with a Vertex, the Java framework, with metrics enabled, meaning that every microservice here, every pod that we see, is exposing some metrics in the Prometheus format, and eventually is waiting that a Prometheus instance comes and scrape those metrics. But at the moment, the instance is not configured for that. So here I've got a Prometheus deployed on Istio systems. So this is the one that comes with Istio. And I can see in the targets, there are a lot of them, a lot of targets. This is all configured by Istio in the config map of Istio. But none of these targets is currently fetching the metrics from my pods. However, it's quite easy to do because in the config map there is a job named Kubernetes pods, which will look for every pod that has the correct annotation and fetch the metrics of these pods if it finds the annotation. So how to do that? This is the deployment YAML of my application, and here I'm going to add the annotation for Prometheus. Annotations, so it's named prometheus.io/scrape, and I'll set it to true. There's another one I'm going to define is prometheus.io/scheme, which I set to HTTP. This one is not mandatory all the time. In my case, it's mandatory because I'm not exposing the metrics on HTTPS, and by default, Istio is expecting to get the metrics on HTTPS. So if I want to not expose on HTTPS, I have to put it. And the third one I'm going to put is the port. So this is where the port has been configured on my application. Here is the Java file where I define the Prometheus server the Prometheus, not server, but an endpoint configuration. So in Vertex, this is basically how we can do programmatically. We define some metrics option with the micrometer metrics module options. We say we are starting an embedded server, setting the port, and setting some labels that we want to activate, etc., etc. And with that, I should be able already to see some metrics in Prometheus. So let's check that. I'm going to deploy it. And let's check the targets. So at the moment, nothing yet. Yeah, and here it comes. So you can see that new job that just appears, and this is my application. We can see the Kubernetes labels, like the app label that comes in my deployment. And if I see the metrics here, yeah, I see that I have all my Vertex metrics. So this is already working so far. that's a great first step to have it in Prometheus. Now, I also want to have it in Kiali. And this is where we have some new works that have been done lately. There is a new CRD that comes with Kiali, which is named Monitoring Dashboard, and which lets you define resource of type Monitoring Dashboard, where you can basically say which is the runtimes that you are covering, and which is the metrics that you are expecting to see and that you want to display in Kiali. So this is an example of monitoring dashboard object. It's really like any other kind of Kubernetes resource. So it's like a YAML file, for instance, and it can be created, or we can perform any CRUD operations that we can do also with other kind of resource, like create it, amend it, or delete it when we want. And it's also namespace scoped. So here, for instance, we're going to insert in the Kiali namespace these four kind of dashboards for Vertex client, Vertex event bus, Vertex pool, and Vertex server. And so let's have a brief overview of that file. It has a name and the runtimes that is related to the title of the dashboard. So we have to understand that in Kiali it's going to be one dashboard. So all the content of that file, or the related content, will be displayed on one page. And when you want to split several metrics over several pages, you just create several dashboards. Then there's a list of charts with the name, server response time, the unit, the spans it takes in the layout, the metrics name in Prometheus, the data type. There's 3 different possible data types. There is histogram, rate, and row. Like here you've got row. And the list of aggregations. The aggregations are basically Prometheus labels, and the Kiali interface will leverage these labels to perform aggregations on. So that's basically it. Here we've got several charts defined, and in the others dashboard that we created, there are other charts, obviously. So let's create them. OC apply -f, and this is the directory that contains these dashboards. And you can see that I have 4 of them created. Now I have something else to do. I have to do the connection between my pod application and these dashboards, and this is going to be done in a very similar way that we've done earlier with Prometheus. Here, if I take the annotations here of my pod, I'm going to add a new one for Kiali. So kiali.io/runtimes, and here I can put a comma separated list of different dashboards. Kiali.io. So for instance, I'm going to put Vertex server. Okay, I save it, and I'm going to redeploy the application. And in Kiali, so this is not in the graph that we're going to see them. This is in the applications and workloads page. So for instance, if I click on the UI and go to the workload, here I've got this new tab that appeared. So the inbound metrics and outbound metrics were previously there for a long time with Kiali. It's basically the Istio metrics. But here, this is the new one, Vertex server metrics. This is the dashboard that I linked through the annotations, and I can see that it's already populated some data. So if I want to add a new dashboard, I just go back to my deployment and add, for instance, Vertex event bus. Okay, I save it. I redeploy, and when I refresh Kiali, No, maybe I hit F5. Yeah, okay, it goes here. So I got the vertex event bus matrix. And here we can see the different, I was talking about earlier, about the aggregation. So this is here, the event bus addresses. So we can see that there are several addresses that I can be interested in particular. And I can see the detail of a chart. Now what I'm going to do is just revert my file here, because at the beginning it was already including all the relevant dashboards. Oh, sorry. Okay, so for instance here, for my UI application, I have server metrics, event bus metrics, and pool metrics. But it may depend on the applications. For instance, the UI does not have client metrics because it does not perform any client queries. But if I look at another one like Stadium, for instance, I've got server, client, and pool, but no event bus because the Stadium is not using event bus. Now, what if I want to have custom application metrics? My applications have been programmed to expose its own metrics. For instance, let's see my file bol.java. We won't go through everything, but here I've defined some, for instance, a gauge here that shows the ball speed. Okay, why not? I've defined it taking the registry, the micrometer registry, so it's exported in Prometheus as the vertex metrics. But I want to show them. So what I can do is define a dashboard for specific to my application. So this is, I did exactly the same as I did with the vertex dashboards. I have monitoring dashboard object kind that I name Mesh Arena because it's the name of my demo, Mesh Arena metrics, and I've put several metrics here, several charts that relates to different metrics. And now what I can do is just deploy that file. C apply -f Mesh Arena dashboard. Okay, and also of course I have to link it in my deployments template, but I actually already did that before. It's on the bol service, yeah, bol deployment. Yeah, I've already have it here. You see I have Mesh Arena here. And so what happens in Kiali now? If we go into the bol workload, yes, I have my Mesh Arena metrics, and I can see here some goals. For instance, last 5 minutes, last 10 minutes, I've seen that I have a goal counter, have some shoot per seconds, but it's not enough, and my speed metric, and etc. etc. So you can see that I can have custom metrics too directly in Kiali. And the nice thing is that it's really related to the workload and the application. So they are labeled in such a way that we can continue to relate them to where they belong to, if they are belonging to a given workload and a given applications. And this is because all the labels that you put in Kubernetes are preserved in Prometheus, and this is very nice to allow to discriminate metrics depending on their source. And that's basically all for what I have to show here. I can show this too. This is also very simple line here showing the runtimes that are related to a given workload. We are able to show it here. Thank you for listening.